Hi book lovers, welcome back to Cozy Novel Niche. Today I'm here with a new review of a book that I've read some weeks ago, actually during vacations, but I ended up filming only right now. But this book still kinda stuck into my mind, so I decided to film a review because it deserves it. And the book's name is 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals by Oliver Burkeman, or Burkeman, not sure. And this little book seems tiny, but it's mighty. I read this book because I saw it, I believe, on Olive's channel. I think so, I'm not sure. But this book, guys, it's so worth it. So I read it. It took me a little bit of time to read it and to complete it, actually, because it is small, like it's 250 pages, but again it's mighty because it's full packed of informations, and sometimes I just had to take a pause, digest everything, and then restart again. This book, as you may see from the title, is about time management, but don't be afraid, it's not one of those books that kind of tries to teach you how to manage your time better, how to pack everything into your schedule and just go through it like a war machine. No, it's nothing like that, actually. This book starts with this very fascinating premise, and it's that a human, like on average, has 4,700 weeks to live if we make it to 90. So if we're fortunate to make it to 90, we have 4,700 weeks to live. So already this first premise on the first page kind of left me speechless, because counting weeks is, I don't know, it somehow makes it more real, and 4,700 doesn't look that much of a time. And I'm in my 30s, so it's that age when you know that you're not a youngster and you're not in the prime exactly of your life, but you're in the midst of your life, you're feeling kind of invincible, and you're not thinking about like your life as an elder, because you're not yet, but it's still approaching. So I don't know, it's that in the middle spot when you're starting to think about everything and how your life will turn out to be in the future and stuff like that. So this book kind of already at the first page got me, and I started reading it, and it is full packed of very interesting information. The author starts with this premise, and then he brings you on a journey, kind of trying to unpack what time is for us, how we perceive time, how we think that we have time, as in the meaning that we own time, as if it's something that we can control and it's something that we can kind of use at our at our pleasure, at our leisure, like as we wish. But it's not like that. Time exists not within us but without us, and we are actually part of time, not the other way around. And it has so many interesting points where I was just like sitting there and thinking about it, because they seemed so true. The biggest thing that I can tell you from this book is that the author definitely goes into details explaining to you why you cannot achieve everything in life, from the biggest to the smallest thing. You cannot plan everything and go through this plan, because life doesn't work like that. And when we are not able to achieve a goal, we usually end up being frustrated with us, but it's just because we have very unrealistic expectations about ourselves and about how time works, pretty much. And he really goes in depth and tells you that first of all you have to give up that unrealistic expectations, and you really have to focus on the things that are very important to you in life, because time is strictly connected to our ability to choose, because we have a limited amount of time and we have always, constantly, every day of our life, decide on what to put our time on and how to use it. And it's choices, choices, choices. Like, if I'm going to the groceries, I'm not going to the movies, and if I'm seeing friend A, I'm not seeing friend B, and stuff like that. We're constantly making choices, but sometimes we're making them without really thinking why or how. And this ends up in us prioritizing silly things in life and useless things in life, instead of focusing on things that are actually dear to our heart and that are really important to us. So this is something that definitely got me when I was reading this book. It was an interesting point of view. It is something that we know on a kind of subconscious level, but to read it like written black and white was something that I really needed. And it's not only about that, it also goes and touches some other aspects, and I just wanted to share with you like 2 or 3 points where I was like, wow, yeah, that's important. And I have him so this book is one of the books that I decided to actually highlight, because that's how much I loved it. And yes, it's light blue, like the cover, because I'm like that. So let's start with the first thing. Since when I read the beginning of the book, 4,000 weeks seemed like such a tiny number to me, this passage was kind of speaking to me directly. Why treat 4,000 weeks as a very small number because it's so tiny compared with infinity, rather than treating it as a huge number because it's so many more weeks than if you had never been born? And that's kind of it. That's so simple, and it's true, and I know it, but I usually never think about it in depth, and this really makes you think about it. Maybe it's not that you've been cheated out of an unlimited supply of time. Maybe it's almost incomprehensibly miraculous to have been granted any time at all. And this really puts our lives in perspective, I guess. It's really, I don't know, I think that I love books that make me think and make me challenge my views, and this book did it in many aspects. Then there was this part, and again I felt attacked personally, because he was speaking about, this book was written at the end of the worst part of the pandemic, so it's quite recent. And here he was speaking about reading, and I had a major problem with reading immediately after the pandemic ended. Not during the pandemic, but after the pandemic, and I wasn't able to figure out why. And then I read this book and it kind of clicked because it says, the experience of reading. Over the last decade or so, more and more people have begun to report an overpowering feeling whenever they pick up a book that gets labeled restlessness or distraction, but which is actually best understood as a form of impatience, a revulsion at the fact that the act of reading takes longer than they'd like. And I guess this is it. This is actually it for me. After the pandemic, I felt like I lost 2 years of my life, like literally lost for nothing. And reading is something that makes you sit there and be with yourself and your thoughts and just to delve into the experience. And I was more like on the go, do, make that, and sitting there seemed like a waste of time, I guess. So I think that this is part of the problem that I felt, and so this really resonated with me. Reading, you can't hurry it very much before the experience begins to lose its meaning. And that's one of the reasons why I'm not making challenges for myself as far as the amount of books that I want to read. For example, it refuses to consent, you might say, to our desire to exert control over how your time unfolds. And again, I mean, reading something properly just takes the time it takes. This author was speaking to me. This book arrived at the exact right time in my life. I loved reading it. And then there was the part where he was speaking about relationships, about why sometimes our relationships with our dear ones end in the way they end, because we kind of perceive ourselves as ever-changing creatures that are kind of infinite. But at a certain point in our life, if we're just meeting someone or having a relationship with someone, we realize that we perceive those people as if they are finite, and they are not ever evolving, and they're not like us, and we need something new and something more because we're that special, but in reality we're just on the same level as those people. So it's just a matter of changing your perspective. And I know that said like that, it doesn't make much sense right now, but believe me, if you will read this book, you will really appreciate that kind of thinking. It doesn't need to resonate with you personally, but it's still a way of thinking that I appreciate. It made me have a different perspective, and I love when a book does that. If you come out of a book with a new POV, then the book is amazing, personally for me. And then there was the last part, and it was about the standards. And it says, there is a sort of cruelty in holding yourself to standards nobody could ever reach, and which many of us would never dream of demanding of other people. The more humane approach is to drop such efforts as completely as you can. Let your impossible standards crash to the ground, then pick a few meaningful tasks from the rubble and get started on them today. And this, I think, can summarize the whole vibe of the book. Again, it's not a self-help book. It doesn't give you suggestions on how to make your perfect schedule or how to plan perfectly your bullet journal or stuff like that. But it really makes you think about the concept of time and how we use it and how we could be using it instead. So if you're interested in this kind of provocative thinking, I guess, in this moment of time when we're all thinking that we need to do everything right now because we don't have enough time and we have to do more, and in the hustle culture and so on and so forth, I think that it's a very precious little book. So go ahead, grab it, read it, borrow it from a library. I think that it will be a very interesting read for pretty much everyone. I won't suggest it to a very young public because it can be a little bit boring, but if you're into it and you're a young adult, then go for it. There is nothing too difficult for you to comprehend in this book. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know down below if you've ever read this book, or if you're planning to read it, or if you've read any other books about time management that you really enjoyed and that were kind of different from the usual I don't know, put as many things in your schedule as you can and then roll with it. So this was it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye! Ciao!